I took a massive gamble on this Apple III, found abandoned in an attic. It's been sitting in a bag since the 1980s. Let's crack it open and find out what's inside. The Apple III is one of Apple's biggest failures. But is this one still alive? First things first, let's open it up. We'll check it out for any hidden dangers. And with old computers, that usually means leaky capacitors, rust, or worst of all, an exploding battery. Now, this is my first time opening this Apple III, and I can see that there are 2 screws on each side of the case. Now, these screws are captive, meaning they won't fall out when removed. Small detail, but pretty handy. Okay, the moment of truth, and oh my goodness, there are batteries. So what a crazy place to put these things where they can leak straight onto the main board. And given the corrosion and a bit of blowing out at the top, it looks like we got here and rescued these in the nick of time. Thank goodness for that, because this computer could have been lost forever if it wasn't found. And this is a problem with these vintage computers. This is bizarre too, because years in the attic usually means dust buildup. And it's actually not caked in here. And I think it's just largely to the fact that the guy who had these computers had wrapped them up in plastic bags. Now, what you might not know is chips literally fell out of these things because of heat issues. The case is solid aluminium, or as the Americans say, aluminum. So a lot of Americans are going to be sitting there going, "It's not aluminium, it's aluminum." No, it's not. No, it's not. You can leave a comment in the description. Tell me what you think. Now, let's look inside. Let's have a look at what makes this machine so infamous. Now, to understand the Apple III, you really have to know what Apple was doing in the 80s. And the Apple III was really designed as a serious business machine. That's how they marketed it. It featured a 1.8 megahertz Cinetec 6502A processor. It was faster than the Apple II, but, slow by today's standards. 128K of RAM, which it came with, expandable to 512. It had a built-in 5.25-inch floppy drive, so no more external drives needed, although you could obviously put one on there. 80-column text, great for business software, especially for back then. Now, initially, it had a real-time clock, but those clocks kept failing, and it was a nightmare for Apple, and Apple eventually gave up, and then they just made them optional and said, look, you can have one if you need to. Bizarre. Now, it also has Apple II emulation mode, so it can run, their old software if you look at it that way. So here's a fun fact. Instead of caps lock, the keyboard has alpha lock. That's right, alpha lock, a small but quirky Apple III detail. Inside, there's not a huge amount of space. There's a couple of expansion slots, and this unit actually has a universal parallel printer card, and that's just it. Now, given there are a lot of ports on the back, I think that's relatively okay. Normally, you'd see an Apple III profile card in here, but this one is empty, so I'm going to have a bit of a cry about that. Not sure what happened to it, because there was a profile drive with this collection and there's not a profile card here. And for those that don't know, the profile was Apple's first hard disk. It was launched in September of 81 for about $3,500. That's $12,000 today, and all for 5 megabytes. 5 meg. That's like 5 photos on your phone. Now, my XT in 1986, my IBM clone, had a 20 meg hard disk, and I thought that was small. For all its promise, the Apple III had one major flaw, and that was Steve Jobs wanted a fanless design. So Apple built this cooling system, which means it means ventilation slots, but no fan. And the result was chips would literally pop out of their sockets from the heat. And Apple's official diagnosis was just lift the computer up and drop it, and hopefully the chips will just go back in and problem solved. But the problems didn't end there. The Apple III was rushed to market in 1980. Despite engineers warning it really wasn't ready, there was about 14,000 units and they were so unreliable Apple had to recall them. And they had a starting price of $4,340 in 1980, and that was about 17 grand today. And businesses expected more than a machine that needed to be dropped to work properly. Not unreasonable. Now, Apple went all in on marketing. It positioned the Apple III as some revolutionary business tool, and some of the ads were pretty creative. And here's a look at how they tried to sell it. I've got some of the original Apple III ads, and I'm going to run you through them now. So this is one of them. Ford spent the better part of 1983 tackling the same details as you'll handle in minutes with an Apple. Edison had 1,800 patents to his name, but you can just be as inventive with an Apple. And Jefferson, well, he had one of the best minds of 1776. But today, you can make better decisions with Apple. So as you can see, Apple really wanted business users to believe this was just the best tool for professionals. But in reality, most companies stuck with the Apple II or switched to the IBM PC when it launched in 1981. So what's next for this Apple III? Well, now we know what's inside. The real work begins. I'll be testing it, cleaning it up, seeing if it still powers on after all these years. That'll be in the next video. I know there's capacitors and things in the power supply, so I'm going to get that looked at. I'm not going to plug it in. I'm not going to take the risk. Now, the question I've got for you is, do you own an Apple III? Have you ever used one? Have you worked with one back in the day? I would love to hear from you, especially if you worked one back in the day. I'd love to hear stories around that. Now, in Australia, they're really hard to come by as not many of them survived, and they're highly, highly collectible. So up next, we'll be looking at the Apple II GS found in this big haul. Yes, it's got the original monitor. A number of people have reached out to me and asked for that. And we're going to check out some repairs made to the Apple II, a Plus, a Euro Plus, and we've got even more hardware to sort through. There's just boxes and boxes of this stuff. So if you like seeing this, please like the video and consider subscribing. We're just a small channel starting out, and I do all my own editing, thumbnails, literally everything. So when I see comments and likes, it just makes it all worthwhile. If you didn't see the original Apple haul, I'll link to the first video here. So definitely go back and check it out right now, and I'll see you over there.